Hey guys, this is JT Works on Cars. In case you're wondering why the camera is pointed so far down, you ever know the third gen 4Runners, right? The windshield's very angled, so it's almost at like a 40-degree angle. So today I'm gonna talk about the top few mods I recommend everyone to do to their third gen 4Runners. And first off, the number one mod I recommend every third gen Toyota 4Runner owner to do is the Tundra brake upgrade. So currently I'm running the stock 5-spoke limited rims, which makes sense because I have a third gen limited 2-wheel drive. And the 13WL calipers work perfect. It clears the stock rims and I have no fitment issues. The only thing I had to modify was just slightly cut the dust shield, which my friend helped me do. He helped me install it. He trimmed the dust shield off and it made room for the bigger calipers. So the advantage of using the 13WL, which is also known as a 231mm, and there's also a 199mm, which you do not need to trim your dust shield at all, is the thicker rotor. You're going from a 22mm thick rotor to a 26. So that increases your heat capacity of your rotor. So it's less likely to overheat and potentially warp. If you ever know third gen Toyota 4Runners, and you brake hard often or you drive in a mountainous area, eventually you're gonna get that brake pedal shimmy. So that's why I recommend everyone to do it. And the pads I recommend anyone to use is Akebono ASPs. Specifically, I'm using Akebono ASP 976s paired with Centric C-Tech rotors. And this setup has been flawless for like almost 15,000 miles. No leaks, no nothing. And I love it. Even when I fully load up the car with almost 1,200 pounds of weight, which includes passenger gear and stuff I put on the hitch on the rear, I do not have trouble stopping at all. I can easily do like a 60 to 0 stop and the ABS will kick in like mad in the dry, which is amazing. Then the second mod I recommend any third gen Toyota 4Runner owner to do, it's not really a mod, it's more like maintenance. I recommend changing out your shock absorbers to Bilstein 4600s if you're gonna stick to stock ride height. And if you plan on lifting anytime soon by even an inch or so, or up to 2.5 inches, I would recommend Bilstein 5100s. It is well worth the money, in all honesty, and it increases the ride comfort. Like for me, this car is so comfortable on the highway. I can go over speed bumps at 20 miles an hour with no regrets at all. Another mod I recommend is changing out that radio. You know that third gen stock unit is horrendous. Like you can't play any modern music. It uses a cassette adapter. Eventually that shit breaks. My cassette to start spitting out cassettes. My cassette player, right? I couldn't use the little aux adapter anymore, so I installed a cheapo Pioneer unit with the extra pocket on the bottom, and it's been flawless for the past 20,000 miles, which I really love. In case you're wondering why I'm just driving in circles, I'm just testing out the suspension to make sure there's no clunks or anything, because my skid plate's a little loose because the local Firestone, they stripped out my fucking skid plate threads because, I don't know, they probably just ugga-dugga it on when they did my alignment. Woo! All right. And another mod I highly recommend doing is when it comes time to ever do your control arm bushings, whether it be the front lower control arm bushings, the rear lower control arms, the rear upper control arms, or the panhard bar, which is also known as a track bar, I recommend installing white line bushings. Like, it makes your car feel much tighter, it handles much better, and polyurethane will last longer than rubber. So you plan on keeping this car to like 400,000 to 500,000 miles because you love your third gen like I do, it's well worth going polyurethane. Polyurethane will last much longer compared to OEM rubber or even aftermarket rubber. And remember, if you replace any suspension components on a third gen 4Runner, please use OEM bushings if you're going to stick to rubber. If you're going to go aftermarket, Energy Suspension makes excellent parts for sway bar bushings and your steering rack bushings. But now that White Line makes steering rack bushings, which is very new, I recommend going White Line. I'm a White Line fanboy if you haven't noticed. I currently have white line in my front lower control arm bushings, and in the rear for all 5 arms, the 2 rear lowers, the 2 rear uppers, and the panhard bar. those are all white line, and it really stabilizes the rear. Like, there wasn't that much play in it, but my car had 260,000 miles at the time, so I decided to replace it. And after replacing it, the car feels much more stable over speed bumps. There's less side-to-side movement when I go over speed bumps, or I'm hitting bumps on the highway. So I have much more confidence while driving the car. And another advice, when it comes time to do your rear brakes, please buy OEM drums, like drum shoes, because when I brought the drum shoes that were, I forgot what brand it was. I think it was Wagner from O'Reilly. Oh my god. Even though I had properly adjusted the parking brake cable mechanism, where the cable attaches to the rear drums, it kept over-adjusting every time I pulled the handbrake, and it would just smoke like crazy when I would drive, because it's literally applying the rear brakes while I'm driving, essentially speaking. So once I switched back to OEM, I readjusted everything. I never had that over-adjustment issue ever again with the drums. It's frankly very annoying, in all honesty. Then another mod I recommend doing is whenever you plan on doing your radiator, because the Radiator OEM is a weak point on these cars. After about 180k miles, the top part near the radiator cap will eventually crack. It's not a matter of if it will crack, it's when it will crack. When it comes time to do that, I just recommend installing a transmission cooler. Because with the transmission cooler, you're gonna eliminate the potential for your transmission overheat if you do off-road pretty hard, or you tow, or you drive in mountainous areas. And it will also eliminate the risk of the strawberry milkshake. If you know anything about 3rd gen 4Runners, that strawberry milkshake is a big issue on these cars. What essentially that means is the OEM red coolant or green coolant, if you're one of those people, it will mix with your trans fluid and it will destroy your transmission, because coolant will grenade your transmission clutches. So I would highly recommend doing that transmission cooler whenever you can, and at the same time do as your radiator, because you're already taking everything out and there's so much room. Just install that transmission cooler while you're at it. Then another simple nice mod that's not really necessary but just modernizes the car, switch out your interior lights into LEDs. Because with the LEDs, it's much brighter, it uses less energy. Like, one time I forgot to close my door, 2 days later the car starts right up. You do that with halogens or the OEM lights, after a couple of hours the car is dead. You can't start it up no more. Then I also like to put LED lights in the license plates, because when I did that, oh my god, when I reverse at night, I can see so well behind me. There's no issues. Hello, you can go. Just your average Dallas driver right here. People don't know how four-ways work. But yeah, when you put in the LED license plate lights and LED reverse bulbs in, when you reverse at night, you can 100% see anything behind you. So you live in the city, or you just live in the middle of the country, and you're just reverse parking for any reason, parallel parking, reversing into a driveway, reversing off a dirt road, it comes in handy and you can see very well. And not only that, it uses less energy. And another thing I would also do is put in LED brake lights, because with LEDs, the moment you hit the brake pedal, the light becomes instantly full bright. The issue with incandescent bulbs is like it's kind of on like a sine wave. It progressively reaches the max, then when you let go of the brake pedal, it progressively dims down. It's not instantaneous, like on off like a LED. And LED, the best way to put it, if you're like an engineering student or a math major, it's kind of like a square wave compared to like a sine wave of the incandescence. And all in all, those are the mods I would recommend. Tundra brake upgrade. What was the second one? Changing out your shocks to Bilstein 5100s or 4600s. I have no regrets with those. Changing out your control arm bushings to white line polyurethane. And you can cheap out if you want to. In some areas like the sway bar bushings, you can use energy suspension there. It will really increase the handling of your car, reduce clunkings, and it lasts much longer than OEM rubber. I'll definitely change out that radio player. It's just such a quality of life. You can even install an Apple CarPlay unit But with the position of where the stock radio is, it's kind of, you have to look very far down. You're basically looking at your shifter if you want to use it. So it's kind of a gimmick, in my honest opinion. Like, how's Google Maps going to come in handy if you have to look that far down, which is kind of unsafe, in my honest opinion, while you're driving. But I'd probably only do an Apple CarPlay unit if you really love like controlling your music right there. Other than that, I would just stick to like a $90 Pioneer unit and have an extra pocket underneath, which is a little more useful for me. Then changing out your interior lights and your exterior lights to LEDs is amazing. In the future, I'm potentially thinking about adding on a light bar. So when I do like late night country trips, I can see a little better. Damn, who the hell is like skirting around up here in the parking garages? But yeah, those are the mods I'd recommend. I highly recommend anyone to do it. They're very simple. Tundra brake upgrade's very easy to do, especially if you're doing the 199s, because the caliper is roughly the same size as the stock ones that come on the 16-inch wheels in the limiteds. The only real difference is you're gonna be using a thicker rotor. Then the control arms, the front lower is very hard to do, I'll admit it. You will have to loosen your steering rack bushings, not the bushings, the bolts. There's like three bolts and one nut that holds it in place or something like that. 4 things you have to remove, and you're gonna have to use a ratchet strap to hold it in place, and you have to make sure you lock your steering wheel before you do that. Otherwise you have to recenter your steering rack, and that's not a very fun job. Honestly, if you do your front lower control arms, you might as well just do your steering rack bushings, considering that you have to loosen the steering rack from the front cross member. Then transmission cooler, that's also another easy thing to do. The rear control arms are very easy to do. If you're able to fit under your car without jacking it up, you can remove 2 sets of control arms at a time, 2 rear lowers, or remove the rear uppers, or remove the panhard bar. Only do 1 set at a time, because if you take all 5 out, your axle is going to be misaligned. And when you do that, it's very easy to remove the uppers. The only issue is you have to cut it out with the box cutter. So it was a little hard because it's a captive bushing, so you have to cut it out, then you're able to press it out. The panhard is definitely the easiest set to do. Then the rear lowers, I had a shop do that. They had to use a torch and burn it out. So I'll remove those arms, let a shop do it. You know what I mean? Other than that, most of these mods are fairly easy to do. You have a little bit of mechanical skills in terms of working on cars. You're a little familiar. But once again, this is JT Works on Cars. I hope you enjoyed my little rambling about what mods you should do on your 4Runner. That's relatively easy, and the difficulty of doing them. And I hope you all have a great day.